Hi teens, I'm Miss Abby, your Teen Services Librarian for the Slidell branches of the St. Tammany Parish Library. So I have a fantastic how-to video for you for making our paper quilled shamrocks from our March Arts and Crafts Teen Tote. So we have two Teen Tote subscription services here in the St. Tammany Parish for our teens 12 to 18 years of age. Our first one is our Teen Book Totes. And for that one, you register between the 1st and the 15th of one month to receive between the 1st and the 15th of the following month. So if you register between the 1st and the 15th of April, you will receive it between the 1st and the 15th of May. And for that tote, when you go to register, it's going to ask you to pick between two things for that month. And when you receive your tote, it's going to have books that fit that theme that you check out and then return 28 days later. And free swag and snacks and cool things for you to keep. Sometimes there's a free book that you get to keep. Sometimes t-shirts, socks. We've done chocolate hearts for Valentine's Day. All kinds of wonderful things. And then our other one is our Teen Arts and Crafts tote. And for that one, you receive two crafts that usually fit some kind of thing for the month, but not always. And we generally advertise what we will be putting in that bag when you register. So you'll know if that's a craft that you want to do. And you register for those between the 15th and the 30th of one month to receive between the 15th and 30th of the following. So if you register for between the 15th and 30th of April, you will receive it between the 15th and 30th of May. Now that we know what the Arts and Crafts totes are, let's get started on our shamrocks. First, we're going to go over the materials needed. If you did not receive an Arts and Crafts bag, but you really want to do this craft, don't worry about it. Usually, more crafts are out of things that you can pick up from the store, or you might already have laying around your house. So this one is mostly out of just paper and glue. So if you have paper and glue, you can do this craft. Okay, so what we need to make our shamrocks are our instructions, which are in the bag. If you don't have these, don't worry about it. I'm going to go over every step in this video. A pair of scissors, some paper strips. These are cut at 1/8 of an inch. And a skewer, a wooden skewer or chopstick. Some paper stirrers. You can use either or, so whatever you have, or anything that is slender and round. I prefer the coffee stirrers, and I'm going to show you why, because there's a little trick that you can do with them. Some glue, a paintbrush, and a little bit of that extra paper that you cut strips out of, because we're going to need to make a stem. Okay, to get started, we're going to start with our round tool, so the stir straw or the skewer, whatever else you have at home, something thin and round, and our paper strips. So I chose green, 2 different shades of green for this one because they're shamrocks. If you don't have green and you want to use a different color paper, you can. If you want rainbow shamrocks, that's up to you. Also, if you just have some white copy paper, you can color it or watercolor paint on it, let it dry, and then cut it into strips. One of the main thing that you really want is to have color on the edges of the strips, because that's what's mostly going to be seen. So I have already started doing my shamrock to make the demonstration a little bit quicker, and I chose to use both colors of paper, and I just wrapped them together as one. You can absolutely do this. My shamrock is going to be a little bit thicker because I used 2 pieces of paper for each leaf, but you can just use one and make it thinner. You can use 2 of the same color if you so choose. That's completely up to you. So to make a shamrock, you need 6 of these little guys. That's going to make 3 hearts. So we're going to start wrapping. And to do this, I have found a fun little trick. So for my stir straw, what it would be really cool is if I had a nice little slot on either end. So if you professionally paper quill, you will buy tools, one of which they call a slotted tool. And that's what's really needed for this. But since we are not professionals and we're just trying to find out if we even like this type of craft, we're going to make our own. So all I did was come to the end here and as evenly as possible cut down about 1/4 of an inch and make a little slit here. Okay, so then I'm going to take my paper, and like I said, I used 2 different colors. So I have this nice lime green and this shamrock green, Kelly green, and you all have the same colors as I do if you got a bag. And I'm going to take the very ends and I'm going to slide them into my slit I just made in my straw. So I lined them up as evenly as I can, and I can fix that a little bit later. And then I took them and put them just into the end. And then I'm going to start wrapping. So when I started wrapping before, I made sure that my Kelly green was on top of the lime green. So if I roll this way, then my lime green is going to be on top. If I roll this way, my Kelly green is going to be on top. And I want to keep mine uniform. You can absolutely play with this and do some of each color on top if you want to do 2. Make them fun and funky. Your shamrocks do not have to look like mine. So then from there, all I have to do is roll it and try to keep it as even as possible and nice and tight. Don't tug too hard because you don't want to rip the paper, but nice and tight. And I'm just guiding it around gently as I twirl my stir straw. And this is the easiest way that I have found to do things. Obviously, I have a brace in my hand, so I'm not as dexterous as I normally would be. So I had to find ways to easily do this for me. So if you also have an issue with being able to turn your hand and twist things, use your good hand and stir and twirl that straw. And this can be adapted for whatever needs that you have. So play around with it, find things that work for you. I think that's how a lot of crafts really are. You can absolutely do them. You just have to find a way that works for you. Ooh. So I slipped a little bit, so I'm just going to push it back together and try to keep this a nice, even, flat spool. So I'm getting to the end, and you're going to notice that if you're wrapping 2, obviously one's going to be shorter than the other, and that's because of the width as you're going around. The outside one should be shorter. So we're going to go all the way to the end, and we're going to trim this up later, so don't worry about it. It might even be a little bit longer by the time we're done. And then I'm going to take my finger all the way to the edge because I don't want it to pull from the center where I slotted it in. I want to make sure it comes out clean, and I'm just going to pull that stir straw out. And then you did all this work, and I'm going to tell you to set it down and let it unroll a little bit. You know, Ms. Abby, I worked really hard to make this nice and tight. And I understand, and it can be kind of frustrating, but this is part of it because you want this nice shape that this is going to give it. So you don't want it to unroll too much. That's what I did here, and it got a little too big. And if you already have some made, you want to kind of make them a little more uniform and keep them in the right size. So that's about the size that I've made before. So I'm going to come to the end where this last green is, the short one. And then I'm just going to take the last few layers and pinch it. Just like that. And that's going to make a teardrop. Okay. Now that I have my nice teardrop shape formed, I'm going to take my glue and my paintbrush, because I'm going to use that as my applicator. And you don't need a lot. You just need a little bit. Your glue, if you use the kind that I gave you, if you got the bag, should be quick drying. This is the kind that was recommended by the paper quillers that I researched before I brought this to you. It is just Elmer's Quick Bond, Quick Dry. And then, ooh, see, it got a little out of shape here. We're just gonna put it right back into shape. Okay, so that's all you have to glue is this tip right here where it would open up to the point of your teardrop. And you're gonna let that dry for a second. Don't trim it yet, just leave it as it is. And we have another one that we're gonna need to make, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that one, just so you can get another little look at it. So I'm gonna take my paper strips again, line them up as evenly as I can. And when they're free and just rolling around, I'm not going to try to straighten the whole strip. I'm just going to try to meet my ends. They're all cut pretty uniform, so they should do just fine. I'm going to slot it into the end of my straw that I used. And then I'm going to start twirling, remembering to keep my dark green on the outside, my Kelly green on the outside. I'm going to be very gentle so I don't pull it out of the coffee stir straw before I get a few layers on it, and so that I don't rip the paper. And as you saw before, if you get a little bit off, don't worry about it. When you lay it down, it'll even itself out just a little bit more. Try to be as even as possible, but don't worry if it gets a little bit out of hand. Okay? Especially if it's hard for you to keep it on if you're having a problem with your hand or anything. I have found that this particular craft hides some mistakes, and they just look like they were on purpose, and it's meant to be that way, which has been very helpful for me. So I'm going to keep going all the way to the end, and it doesn't take much time to do this. Just using the two fingers on one hand to guide these and the other one to wrap. And so I've gotten all the way to the end. I'm going to get up my nail in there underneath to touch the stir straw so that when I pull it up, it doesn't catch the center and just pull it out like a cone. When I lay it down, I'm going to make sure all the layers are nice and flat together. Oop, and that one popped out just a little bit too big. So if that happens and you're like, oh no, that's going to be way too big of a shamrock, no worries. Make sure that you have the layers or where they're supposed to be. So this one, the green tried to go inside of the lime. The dark green tried to go inside the lime. And pull it a little bit tighter to the size that you want. Okay. So I have mine about the size that, about the size that I want. This one's being a little tricky. I'm going to let it open slowly, and then I'm going to pinch it where I want. So as you can see, this one wanted to spring open, whereas the one before was like, no, I'm cool. So now I have it pinched into my teardrop, and I'm kind of holding it because this one really does want to spring forward. So I'm going to quickly grab my brush with just a dollop of glue. You don't need a ton. The more you put on it, the longer it'll take to dry. And I'm going to brush just about 1/4 of an inch from the tip of the teardrop. And you got to do it for both layers, right? Because the outside layer is not going to adhere if you don't get a little bit of glue on that. And there are my 2 teardrops. Okay. Well, ultimately, I want this shape. So I need 6 of these to complete a full shamrock, which is 3 leaves. If you want a lucky shamrock, then you're going to need 8 of them. And then you're going to take them I'm going to try to keep all of my swirls going in the same direction. And you're going to butt them up together and glue them like a heart. So you want to put two together to make a heart. So I have my trusty little paintbrush, and these are the two that I just did. So I'm just going to come around the outside, maybe about 1/4 to 1/2 inch, depending on how big you made these. And then I'm going to press them together, keeping the tips, not the tips of the paper you're going to trim, just the tips of the teardrop, and squishing them together a little bit. That'll help make the heart. Okay. So that's going to need to dry for a second. Don't try to fiddle with them too soon. You do want it to dry. And again, the more glue you put on them, the wetter it will be, so the longer it will take. And it does depend on the kind of glue that you are using. So if you're using school glue, it's going to take a very long time for that to dry. So don't fiddle with them. Try to hold them nice and tight. Maybe use a paper clip to keep those papers together so that they glue. This is the kind that was recommended to me. It was just Elmer's Craft Bond. You can find it at most hobby or craft stores. And a little goes a long way, so you don't have to use half the bottle, just use a little bit. Alright, so I think this is gonna be good enough for me. So I'm gonna take my scissors now, and I'm going to trim just up to the tip of my teardrops and make that nice clean heart. Okay. And so now I have my 3 leaves. Alright, now that I have my 3 leaves together, and I'm only going to do a shamrock, I'm not going to do a lucky clover. That's up to you if you decide to do that. I have a decision to make. So I can use one of the larger pieces of paper that were in my kit to cut a stem if I'd like. And if I did that, then I would glue these together in my shamrock formation and then just attach it to the back. Or I can use some of this extra. Look how cute that is. I can use some of this extra to make a stem. So I'm going to take a few of these extra pieces that I have, and I'm going to make just a thin stem. I don't want anything crazy. I just want like a little stem to go together. So instead of trying to roll or wrap this, all I'm going to do is glue 3 pieces together. So I have a Kelly, a lime, and a Kelly, because I just want a nice thin one. And you can even roll this if you'd like. So we're going to do it a couple different ways. So I'm going to take this first, and let's say about 2 inches just to be sure I have enough, maybe 3, because I can always trim it later. And I'm just going to glue these 3 together real quick. So, 1. Again, nice and light with that glue. You don't need a lot. It does dry quick, so you gotta work quick. I am not working quick. That's okay. And one more clear. And the less you use, the quicker it'll dry. So remember that. So this will absolutely work just like this. So my stem would come down. Hold on, let me put my things together. I'm going to kind of squish them up a little bit so I can get my shape better formed so I can plan this out. Okay. So then I would just have a stem coming this way. I could have it laid down and just be a little bit thicker. I could also roll it. So let's fold it in half and see what that looks like. Now they're thicker and they're glued together, so that's going to make it kind of hard to fold them. And if you're having a problem with that fold holding, you can absolutely glue it in the center of that fold, and that should help hold that all together. You could even do a quick little twist on it to make it a little more interesting if you so choose. So I'm just going to do that quick fold, and so then it would be like this. And of course I would trim it to the size that I wanted. And that's kind of cute. So let's go with this. So we're going to start gluing this together, and I can trim this later. So I'm going to start with my center one. This one's going to be my center one. And again, I'm going to come down this side here. And I'm going to glue from the tip almost to the where it starts to a nice little curve here for the top of the leaf, just like that. And I'm going to squish them together. So I've got two of them together on this one side. I'm gonna let that dry together a little bit, nice and tight. And then I'm going to take my third one, same thing, go up from the bottom point up to the curve here where it starts to curve for the top of the leaf, just like that. And then I'm going to squish that together. And I'm going to make sure all of my tips kind of meet together. Nice and tight. And that is the top of my clover. So this was the stem that I came up with. But then I also had, let's try another stem while we wait for that to dry a little bit, just to see what happens. Okay. So I'm going to start by layering my 3 little strips together. Try to be as even as possible here. If you don't, that's okay too, because this is yours, so it can be whatever you want it to look like. And if the first one doesn't work out, you have extras, make another. It is absolutely okay. So this one, you know, I had said you could try twisting. Let's see what happens with that. Let's try twisting it gently because you don't want it to rip. And it is just paper. So we're going to do some nice gentle twist. Putting it nice and firm. Oh, I think this is going to be cool. I think this is what I'm going to go with, actually. I like this one. Be creative. Experiment. Have fun. This does not have to look like Miss Abby's, because it's not Miss Abby's. It's yours. Okay? Alright. So make sure one end is nice and glued so it doesn't unravel. And then I'm going to take the other end and slide it right into the center here. That's where I want it. So I'm going to take my nice little dollop of glue. These paintbrushes are fantastic, but if you don't have a paintbrush and you're having trouble getting that glue in there nice, you can absolutely use a Q-tip. Even a toothpick will get that glue in there. So I have that glue in there and I just slid it right on in. And you're going to need to let that dry real good. So I'm going to kind of mish it together just a little bit because I want it to dry well and adhere and not fall off. And then if you're just going to use it as a decoration where it's going to be stable, then you don't have to worry about anything else. So if you're going to put it maybe on a bulletin board or put it on your desk for something pretty to look at, that's it. Now, if you wanted to make a shamrock and put it on a chain to wear it, or anything else where it's not going to be as sturdy, you're going to want to take your paintbrush and glue and do a nice coat over it and let it dry. Flip it over, do the same thing on the other side, and make sure you get your edges too, a little at a time, so that it won't unravel and it will stay together. This same glue will work just fine, or if you have some Mod Podge or anything like that, it'll give it a nice coating and make it more durable. This would also be cute on like the front of a card if you're going to give somebody a St. Patrick's Day card, or you could do this with different colors and make them more flowers for spring. There is so much you can do with this, and I absolutely love my shamrock. So I'm just going to put this on my bulletin board as one of my favorite crafts because I think it's adorable. And so I'm not going to try to do any overglue because I don't need that. But that's absolutely an option if that's what you want. And that's it. That is your shamrock. And again, this would be adorable for flowers. You could do pinks and blues and yellows and then make a nice card or a portrait, a picture to frame. Put it in a shadow box. That would be adorable too. I hope you enjoyed this craft. So this was our first time paper quilling in the teen department. I think this was quite fun and I will be doing this again. So when I've looked at all of the fun paper quill art other people have done, I thought it was so difficult and I was kind of intimidated to try. And so I saw this and was like, well, that is complicated. It looks complicated, but it looks like I can do it. And then once I tried doing it, I realized that it's truly very simple. It just takes a little bit of time to get the technique. So remember, I did one that was entirely too big. So then how much bigger than the other leaves it is. So then I just tried again and I kept at it. And again, yours does not need to look just like mine does because I'm not you and you're not me. So take your time, have fun, experiment, and enjoy. Thank you for joining me for your paper quill shamrocks. And tune in next time for our next teen arts and crafts tip. Thank you.